Hey everybody, and welcome back to Energy in Motion. So we've had an environment change, right? This is not the same boring studio you might be used to seeing. And that's because we've actually parted ways with KMWI Media. Not because of any ill will, but because I'm growing and I want to be more creative and I want you guys to get to experience me more in my natural environment. So there's going to be a lot of different locations that we shoot at. So for this episode, if you're only listening, please be mindful that we shot this episode in my backyard. My backyard is annoyingly close to a street, so I have done my best through Audacity to take some of those sounds out, but this is natural sound. I hope you enjoy it, just like I enjoyed recording it. So this time on Identity Crisis on Energy in Motion, I got the amazing opportunity to interview my father. And so he's going to be able to sit down and talk us through, one, a bit of his perspective from hearing the women speak last week about identity crisis, and then two, from not only a male perspective, but a black man's perspective on discovering and developing a healthy self-identity as well. And then we go a little bit further and start discussing the idea of what is our attachment to identity and what are we outside of our identity. This episode is going to give you great insight as to how did I get as deep as I got, and just the beauty of being able to love oneself to transcend identity, because it is our life's goal to do that. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and give me feedback. So, Daddy, I want to thank you for sitting out here with me. I mean, we enjoy our patio time, not just when we're doing fun things like this, but this is a great time to actually be able to converse and bring in your opinion as a man, not just a man, but a black man, about how you have experienced your own growth and self-identity. So you got to tell me that you tuned in last week. I would hope my own daddy tuned into my show.
Yes, I did.
And so what were your general thoughts over what you listened to last week from the point of view of the women, the mothers, and so?
I felt they were very open and honest about how they viewed themselves and their own personal identities. I view identity as a fluid paradigm. Being someone who's experienced 6 decades plus
and looking good
of life, I find that your identity, my identity, changes. I mean, throughout time, and because it does, it gives me pause. I simply have to stop and examine myself to really understand who I am at a certain time in my life.
Yeah.
Now, at one point in time, I think I viewed myself as very self-centered. And I say that because in order to stay in control of my environment and the things about my life, I had to focus on what was best for me, what got me to where I wanted to be. And in many respects, I mean, that made me have to be pretty self-centered. And it was always interesting when people recognized that about me, that they could see through maybe what I was projecting and realize I was a very self-centered person. I mean, they viewed me as such.
Yeah. As the dog frolics in the background. We're at home, people. This is at home. Yes.
Yeah. And then as time went on, how I identified myself, and see, I think you have to do a self-examination of yourself in order to be able to say, this is who I am. I mean, and that kind of gives you your identity. And with me, I mean, that hadn't been who I was not a person to sit still long enough to say, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And my emotional makeup did not allow for me to do that kind of self-examination, which meant, in many respects, I let others identify me. I took my identification and who I was and what my existence was in this universe from cues that I got from other people. Primarily your mom. She helped identify if I was a good husband. She helped identify if I was a good if I was a good father to my kids. One of the biggest arguments that the two of us ever had was around her making a claim, that I wasn't as great a dad as I thought I was. That caused tremendous turmoil within me because my identity had been just that.
Yeah, great husband, great father.
Yeah, exactly. And also, from that incident, it taught me I can't put my trust and my identity in someone else's hands.
Yeah.
Because just because that was her view at that moment, at that point in time, should not have, told my life story, of who I am and what I was truly about.
Absolutely.
And I would assume in many instances what we have to do as part of this universe is to find a source, find something within us that truly and truthfully identifies who we are.
Yeah.
So that we have a standard that's not based on the whim of someone else, that's not based on our own ego and our own personal one-sided view of who we are. If we can identify and adhere to a source that lets us know exactly who we're supposed to be. And you say, well, who could do that? How could that be done?
That's what the people want to know.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is no human being can provide that for us. We can't provide it for ourselves. There has to be a standard above us. And when I say above us, it's within us that we can go to trust that it will provide us a constant, ever-present, truthful identification of who we are and who we're always meant to be in this life.
Absolutely.
And having that kind of insight to know that there is a source, to know that, you call it whatever you want to call it. You call it consciousness, you call it universe, you call it God, you call it spirit, you call it a multitude of different names. But to know that there is a source that you can go to, that you can trust, that they have your best interest always, every day at hand. That they are always looking out for your best interests, and they want you to know that about them, so that there's a trust that goes beyond all understanding between the two of you. You have that relationship that you without any shadow of a doubt that they have your best interests, and they know that you trust them with your all. You have surrendered all to them to the point where they don't have to wonder if you wonder about them. And in that relationship, what that does is it gives you the adventure in this life to find out who you truly are. And it's not all given to you in one lump sum.
If only.
Yeah.
Actually, no. Yeah, no. Thinking about it, I don't know if I would want it all in one lump sum. I think that would be very overwhelming. I think we assume we want it all in one lump sum because we're eager.
Yeah.
And we're also anxious to make sure that what we thought we wanted, we can actually have. So it's like, yeah, give it to me so I can see that I can have it. But I think it would be entirely too overwhelming to be given everything, all the answers, all the reassurance, all at once.
Yeah.
It's part of the journey.
Overwhelming and boring.
Mainly boring. Yeah.
Because when I was saying that, in the 60 plus years, there's just been such a maturation process, and that's a great thing. At a point when my wife passed away, I honestly believe my life ended, and the identity that I had built up and understood myself to be, I questioned it all. Who was I to be at this point where everything just seemed like it was a lie? It was totally, untrue. It had no solidity about it. Everything was abstract in my life. So to have asked me what my identity was at that point in time, I couldn't have told you, which led me to believe that there was no point of continuing to exist because there was no identity.
But that's something that I wanted to ask about or touch on, because it's the idea that if I'm not what I thought I was, then
Right.
why am I even here at all? And I don't think people even consider the idea that if I'm not what I thought I was, I could be something else.
Wonderfully put, because that's the adventure that's ahead for us, to find out who else can I be.
Yes.
Who else, or maybe even better, who am I really at this point in time? Who am I genuinely at this point in time? At that point, I didn't think there was anyone. You can literally not see the future even available, or not see if you're okay. Well, let's take it back to the self-centered time in my life. Being so self-centered locks you into possibly a single point of view about things, and what that does is it contributes to you not being able to have your hands open to receive any more of what and who you are.
Tightly clenched.
But that's right. What that source, what that consciousness, what God has to do, what that spirit within you, I mean, that's working through you to provide all good to you, and also to provide you in this universe as a source of good, where its good can pass through you out into the world. What that does so effectively is work with you to be able to keep yourself open to the possibility of change, and to the possibility of better, and to the possibility of creating worlds and universes within you that not only bless you but bless the world at large, creating those things within you that open your heart and your mind up to endless possibilities, infinite possibilities of who you are and who you can identify as, and that just opens up, I mean, vistas that we can't even imagine of truths being shared with you and told to you and explained. I mean, it broadens your scope in so many respects. So it gives you, I mean, a zeal for life that just was never there before, and you never could have imagined it before. It's a timing thing. That source in you operates on such. It's like such a schedule of when's the best time for this particular event to happen, to lead to this event happening, that gets us to this thing happening, so that we can just have our minds blown of how great things, I mean, can be and will be for us. Absolutely. If we trust it.
So, do you think there could be cons to even deeply pursuing identity? Because we get really tied up in it, and to the point where some people don't know how to live without being who they thought they were. So do you think, and if you do think there are cons, what do you think the cons are to how attached we as human beings are to our identities?
If we're basing it on the fact that we are human beings, one, I think that's a con. That's a limitation in and of
being a human is a con.
Yes, I mean,
in comparison to being
greater,
metaphysically just existing versus being physically existing.
Exactly, and thank you for clarifying it, because I know that probably would throw people for a loop. Thinking, well, what else am I supposed to be if I'm me to be? Yeah. Really
better. We want you to be better.
And that's exactly right. If we limit it, let me put it this way, if we limit ourselves to simply living out our existence and using that phrase that so many of us have, that I'm only human, I mean, to me, whenever I hear that, it says I'm going to use this as an excuse not to be my best self.
Yeah, it sounds like you're arguing for your limitation.
Very wonderfully put. And I think we deserve better for ourselves. We just do. I'm not saying this, I mean, from the point of view that I don't understand. I've lived too many years simply with a consciousness that limited myself. I understand that where we're at, and we need to be thankful for where we're at.
Because we had to get to this place.
That's exactly right. Be thankful for wherever we're at, but know that there is a source within you, that there is a place within you that you can go. And let's take it this way. Many times we'll strive for material things. We'll pray to God, I mean, for material things, thinking that will solve all the problems in our lives. That material things will bring about peace in our lives. That material things will bring about love and relationships that we want. In the way that we want them, that we think they should be.
So maybe not just material, but we ask for external things.
Okay, I love that. But that was really the point. That we seek the external things, the things outside of ourselves, thinking that those things will satisfy, that those things will end, I mean, all thirst or hunger and desire in our lives, when really, in truth, what the internal things will only bring that to pass. But we can't go after the internal things simply to
get the external.
Get the external.
Yeah.
That should not be the goal. The goal should be to obtain the internal things and to hold fast to the internal things simply because those are the better things for us in life.
Those are the fulfilling things.
Those are the things that will fulfill us the most, that will complete us the most, that will allow us to be, as we've used the term and overused the term, our best selves. And know the truth about our true identity. I mean, because that which we really are is the only thing that can explain to us what our real purpose in life is and what our true identity in life is.
So I have my final question, which is about the idea of transcending identity. Because there's a spiritual teacher named Muji who I put you on to, and I'm thankful that you listened to. But he talks about the idea of almost transcending identity and becoming more aligned with the unchanging within you. It's the idea that, what's the analogy he uses? The mind compared to consciousness. The mind is wind and consciousness itself is space. Space doesn't have to move. Space can just exist and be what space is. It doesn't have to defend itself. It doesn't have to go anywhere. It has been here all the time. It's not even eternal. It's timeless. Timeless. And wind is so busy, changing, going places, and it needs space to exist, but space doesn't need wind to exist. And so I see self-identity, the mind, the ego, very much as a part of the wind. And we get caught up in how busy it is and how much it moves, but the unchanging and transcending identity to become one with that unchanging. Do you think that that's something that is humanly possible?
I feel that's our ultimate end. I feel as a human being aspiring, that is what we aspire to reconnect ourselves. And I use the word reconnect, but I don't think that's accurate. Reconnect, I mean, gives you the thought that we have been separated from this. We've never been separated from that wide open space. We've never been separated from that transcendent, being. We've always been a part of it, and it's ultimately what our true identity, has always been. What we have to get to the point in many instances in life, there's a verse that says, "Be still and know that I am." It says, "I am God," but just to know that I am, that vastness that's out there that you spoke of, that space that's out there, the reason it encapsulates all power is because of its perspective. From that stillness point of view that it has, it tells us to be still so that we can join in with it
in observing.
Yes. And have that perspective. It's like being on a mountaintop and having a full panoramic view of everything that has taken place in the past, the future, as well as the perspective of the present. And it wants us to
and honestly, anything that could happen, I also. So not just what has and will, but what could, all these other different like directions that life could take.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that trips me up, is it's aware of all the possibilities, and somehow it's not overwhelmed.
Yeah. And if you think of and understand how vast and wonderful that is, you can kind of sort of grasp what all powerful,
you can begin to fathom
what an all omnipotent being is like. But that's who we are. That's who we are a part of. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like I've used the analogy many times. It's there's this wonderful bright sun in the sky, and it has all this energy producing from it. An aspect of it are the beams that come from it. It still has all the power and the energy and the greatness of that sun, but we're that being that comes from it, and so we have all access to all of that. Mm-hmm. But we have been so brainwashed,
domesticated.
We've had ourselves convinced I'm only human, and therefore we limit what we have the capability of doing. And I'm not saying this from the point of view of someone who has mastered all this. I'm saying I understand, how, to a degree, how much I have limited myself. And all I'm attempting to do, I love where your life is taking you. I've told you many times how far beyond anything that your mom and I could even dream for you, you'll go. Because at this point in time in our lives, at the age that you are in your life right now, we had no understanding, no grasp of the depth of God and the greatness of what He wanted for us and who we were. Mm-hmm. And to know that there's so much greatness ahead for you, it just makes me proud, which makes me want to assure you from this end, from the 60-some years end of things, my strong suggestion to you is never limit. The dreams, the ideas, the thoughts, they'll come to pass in most amazing ways. If He's put it already in your heart that this thing is going to be, regardless to what it appears to be, regardless to how the appearance, because all the appearance is a human viewpoint. All we have to do, all we want to do, is raise our consciousness to the point where our perspective is that mountaintop experience perspective, where our perspective is not a sunbeam who's stuck in the mud down here, but a sunbeam that's more closely connected to its source, and therefore you'll be seeing all of this from that higher vantage point, which will make it more evident that any of those dreams, any of those God placed desires of your heart, it makes it so much more receivable, because you'll know it from that point of view.
Yeah, and I'll be able to access it.
Yeah.
Well, that's that. Y'all see where I get it from. And thank you, Daddy. Thank you for loving on me. Thank you for loving on me publicly so everybody knows how loved I am. I think they can tell by how I speak to them. But this is where I get the ability to speak so much love to other people because it was demonstrated to me. So thank you for demonstrating it to me. Thank you for demonstrating it to my brother Judah. And do you have any tips specifically for men? Because I feel like going through the ebb and flow of identity is something that people often don't notice about men until it's a shift, like an identity crisis in their like 40s or 50s. So do you have any advice for men finding their way, especially in nowadays?
Be still and know that I am God. And what I mean by that is sometimes we have to just be still. Sometimes we have to just, okay, well, who am I? Who am I? And then who do I really want to be? Am I the person? Do I at this present moment epitomize who I view myself and who I've always wanted to be? And if you aren't, you can always change. You can always stop. You can always decide, I'm going to take some small baby steps to get me, and I'll break it down, and I'll take it. I mean, how do you eat an elephant? In small bites. Small bites. And we'll break it down, and we'll get closer and closer day by day to where it is and who it is that we want to be. Because, I mean, this world will have you running 1,000 miles an hour. And the one thing that slowed me down, I believe, because I probably would still be running 1,000 miles an hour, because the world tells you got to provide for yourself, you got to provide for your family, you got to do this. It will define you, it will identify you, and you can easily fall into the trap of accepting what, as a man, as a black man in particular in this country, what the outside tells you are. You can't let it. You can't let it. This is your life. You've got to be the one to say, well, why? Why do I have to listen to this? This is a limitation. This is holding me back. This is keeping me from being my best. If what Tommy is saying is true, there's a source out there that I can attach myself to that is within me, that will have me creating my own future, that will have me creating my own adventure, that will have me being the best me possible. Because it's never seen me at any point in time as being less than what it identifies me to be.
Absolutely.
I just need to find out who I am from its vantage point, from its perspective. And once I know that, I can take off and run, and I can fly. But it just means that we need to be still sometimes long enough to see it. From Spirit's point of view.
Absolutely. Well said, Daddy.
Yeah.
Great work. Great conversation.
Yeah, I always enjoy our time together.
Absolutely.
Always.
Always.
Yeah.
Good stuff, right? My daddy's pretty awesome. And I'm thankful that y'all get to hear from the man who's poured so much love into me, who's made it possible for me to pour so much love into you all. So I hope that our takeaways from this conversation, even though we did have a couple technical errors, so if there was some video missing, please forgive us. But this conversation was so beautiful because it pairs so well with last week's. The women got to speak from their perspective of oftentimes feeling like they've been put into roles that don't suit them. And to hear from my father the importance as a man, even though in the society you do have to be self-centered to an extent so that you can hone in on your own skills and your own abilities, to also be able to know that there's a stillness within you, just like there's a stillness within all of us, to be able to tap into and to feel connected, to feel loved unconditionally, and to feel that stillness and that greatness of that I am. Whether that's source for you, whether that's the universe, that's consciousness, or whether that's God for you. So thank you all for tuning in to this very experimental episode, this very mini episode of Energy in Motion. In the future, you can expect that I'll start doing some 30-minute episodes, and when I have a guest or I have a big topic, I'll do an hour-long episode. But you'll get to see me weekly now. So keep with the encouragement. It helps. And also keep with the feedback. That helps too. So as always, family, here on Energy in Motion, you get to feel whatever you feel, and you always deserve to heal. Peace.